the name Corpse Paint came about.
For me, it's just like an electric jolt.
It's the real ugly side of humanity, and their music sounds like it.
I always wanted to be a band that was approachable to people, that was just regular ass people.
Yo, what's up? So before I start this episode, I want to bring up two really good friends of mine that I've met along the way. They've been the backbone and really the biggest supporters of this podcast since day one. Everything visually you see with this podcast has been done by Wither Designs and Benny Bones Art, and it could be your band next. Check them out on social media, get yourself something unique and original, and yeah, let's do this.
What's up, John? I'm super stoked to have you and Devil Master and all that kind of stuff on my podcast. I wanted to bring you on the show, and specifically because I saw you guys at Psycho Las Vegas, and I didn't hear anything about your band before that, right? And I was just in the front row, and I was in awe, dude. I was like, "What?" I'm like, "This is what just happened to me." I'm like, "You guys like rule."
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. That was a fun fest. It was a really good time.
Yeah, and it was funny because I saw like your singer like after your set like playing like poker or something. I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, he's a party maniac.
Yeah, I thought it was very funny. But I guess I want to talk about your experience at Psycho Las Vegas. How was it? Have you been there before? And
yeah. So we did. I believe like 2018 was our first time out there. It was actually our first time out on the West Coast in general. It was a blast. It's definitely different than like stages we usually play, where we're usually, we were a basement band and then playing bigger venues and bigger stages and stuff. It's really cool, and it's interesting to see like the sort of adaptation or the like evolution of what we're trying to do on a bigger stage. So every time we try to get it a little bit bigger, and but yeah, Psycho's awesome. The lineup this year was phenomenal. It's like playing with all of our heroes and all the reason we make music, seeing them in person, playing a show with them, it's a dream come true. So
yeah. Well, another thing I wanted to bring up is the fact that like, I mean, it says something because like, I mean, I saw like I saw so many bands that weekend, and there was like a select few where, I didn't hear them before. And then I was like, wow, like, I don't know, that fest opened my eyes to a lot more like interesting music that's going on. And I think that's one of the coolest things about that fest is it's just kind of weird. Like there's just a lot of things going on.
mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not just like a death metal festival or just like a black metal thing.
For sure. That's definitely not like, our cup of tea really either. We're, I mean, a lot of what we try to do in music and what inspires us to make music is out of the ordinary, and obviously we're metalheads and punks, but we listen to all kinds of stuff. So I really dig going to festivals and playing shows and just going to shows in general that are like mixed and different.
Yeah, and I think that they really executed that, man. I mean, it was my first time being at Psycho Las Vegas, and just being a festival person as of like the last couple of years. But I don't know, I was very like inspired. Like I like got back home and I'm like, dude, like why don't like I start a festival up with just a bunch
man,
of like a bunch of random
we'll
bands.
play it. Yeah, just let us know.
But yeah, man, I noticed that you guys like literally just play with My Chemical Romance. Like what the hell? Like what?
Yes, it's a phenomenal opportunity for us. We, they reached out to us. So we've been talking to a few of the members for a couple of years now. They're, they are about music. They love the underground. They support a lot of music that you would not assume that they would. And like, us being one of those bands, and it was a phenomenal opportunity for us. Definitely way outside of our comfort zone for sure, and yeah. So it was a blast. We had a great time, and those guys are awesome, man. Super supportive. Overall, a phenomenal experience for us.
Yeah, well, and I don't know. Going from like, I mean, you stated that like you guys started in basements and you still are playing probably basements. You know, most bands like to stay in basements and then go straight to like stadiums, dude. Like what? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this genre of music is not stadium. Um, I don't know. Like, you don't see these type of bands at stadiums, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean
so
that's the big thing for us. We were just like, you know what, man? Like, there's a lot of kids here tonight. Who are coming here. We met people at the show. They were like, hey, this is my first concert of my life, you know,
that's
and
crazy.
and then for us to be the band that they saw that night, I'm like, you know, I really hope that we inspired people and showed them that there is like other stuff out there, you know, because like without that experience for me as a kid, I wouldn't be in music and listening to the stuff that I listen to, you know, going to shows and seeing stuff that I didn't expect. And I mean, like, I hopefully that was the experience they came out of that with.
Yeah. Well, I think I guess the takeaway from that is like My Chemical Romance. I mean, they're huge. I mean, they have millions and millions of followers and plays. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I just really respect the fact that they took you guys out on that tour because like
Y-
it just goes to show that they're still like humble and they don't just pick the biggest band so they have like the biggest stadium show. You know what I mean? Like, um, yeah, like
Yeah,
the
absolutely. I
art
mean,
is
the whole
art is
package,
art. You know?
exactly. Like the whole package was a lot of bands that, you know, it was such a mixed bill of really interesting stuff. And it just goes to show you, like, you know, those guys have never really lost touch with where they're from and where they're going to, you know. So
Yeah.
huge respect to them. You know, I like absolutely nothing but amazing things to say about them. And the experience overall was fantastic, you know, very positive. Even from an audience perspective, I was like, I don't know if people are going to get this, and
I
and
was about to
people,
say, dude, like,
yeah.
uh, I like the curveballs though, man. That's why like I ended up where I'm at. Like,
Hmm.
digging into extreme music is like those curveballs during shows, man. Like, think about it. Think about give me a show in the past that you've like seen as a kid where you saw like a curveball and it led you to getting into more stuff, underground stuff. Do you remember
For
anything?
sure. I mean, like, I was, you know, going to a lot of for in Philly, like metal and punk is very like symbiotic. You know, there's a lot of both happening, especially if you're into the underground. And like for me, like I would be going to, like, there wasn't a huge audience for just metal, like in terms of underground and just punk, so they would combine those shows. So I would show up and I would see like really cool like post punk bands or goth bands or just D beat bands and stuff like that at like a show that's, you know, would have just been typically metal or typically
Mm,
punk. And that kind of mixed mentality was huge in Philly, especially like I said, in underground music. Like it's such a small world that there's that necessity to combine everything together, and it kind of creates its own unique sound. Like the only place I can compare it to, especially like for me coming up in music, was like Detroit, where they have such a small scene. All those bands, all that music was just really cool because it just combined all the elements of all the things that were around and made its own unique sound. And that's kind of where we came from, you know.
right. It, and that's awesome that you say that because, Metal and Beer Fest, um, I went there as of recently, and it seems like I mean, obviously that's like a bigger festival or whatever, but it seems like there's like, something happening in Philly for metal. You know what I mean? Um, and yeah, I guess is there a lot of like basement shows or anything going on there? Like what's like the happening place, I guess.
It hasn't been. I mean, we're kind of just getting back into like live shows in terms of like having venues and stuff. You know, unfortunately, like the pandemic took out a lot of the stuff that was around that had been around for a very long time. And um, but it's cool to see like a new scene sort of crop up, and people are really taking the reins and starting to actually like get stuff going again. I went to a show last night. Really cool mixed bill. Lots of really awesome bands. Lots of good friends of ours. We're actually playing a show with them this week. Final Gasp, Dead Heat, High Command, Zorn. Like just really interesting styles of music all together, all in one night. And again, that's like I appreciate that. Like it's totally out of the ordinary. You had like metalheads, punks, hardcore kids. It was cool. It was like it reminded me of back in the day, like seeing all these bands and like all these different people there just to see music. It didn't matter what it was, you know.
Yeah, and I kind of want to segue into, um, obviously, you're trying to go for like a visual aesthetic with your band. I guess my question to you is this: with a lot of bands starting to do that, how do you? Hmm. I don't know. A lot of bands do it, and it comes off really cheesy. But I don't know. Like you guys seem to like have a very respectful way of doing it. You know what I mean? I,
You
I yeah,
experimentation, you know. It didn't happen at first, you know. We kind of stumbled at first and tried to figure it out, but it's like, you know, trying to figure out like a visual representation of what we sound like, and you know, taking influence from a lot of like the music and especially the live aesthetic of bands that we grew up listening to and kind of influenced our sound. It's been us trying to take those influences but obviously do something unique with it and our
yeah,
own thing. And I think that if it just comes off as genuine, then you know people won't question it and it's not going to come off as cheesy or as you know, too like overthought, if you will. Like it's just I don't know. We just kind of stumbled into it, and now it is what we are. You know.
yeah. Well, I mean, thinking back to the beginnings of the band, did you guys start off using like face paint and stuff like that, or no?
Yeah, that's been something since the very beginning of the band. Some of this, like the elements, have evolved since then, and you know we've gotten better at what we are able to do with makeup and stuff like that. But what we were trying to do in the beginning is like a huge influence for us is Japanese hardcore, and especially like the dark
Okay,
Japanese hardcore had a very unique aesthetic about it. And they were some of the earliest bands to start doing corpse paint and stuff like that. It was a very
really?
crude,
You said
interest. Yeah,
Japanese hardcore bands?
yeah. So a lot of it's again like a curveball for people, and they're like, you know, black metal, and but the Japanese hardcore scene had that going on for a long time. There's a huge influence of that, and that all goes back to like the Misfits and Sam Hain and Danzig and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
um, it's this interesting kind of cultural, you know, like traveling of influence that happens from the Misfits through Japan through back to, you know, what we have done. And you know that all that stuff has been a huge influence for us. We're just like nerds about music, you know. We we spent a lot of time in like, you know, investigating and researching this type of stuff.
yeah. And I think that I don't know, like thinking about when I was in a band in the past, I think that was the one thing that was lacking. I mean, any band could get up and wear like black t-shirts and whatever, but just adding like a little bit, a little bit of something like extra, goes a long way. But I feel like sometimes bands, they try to add that one thing extra and then it just comes off really like not bad, but just like I don't know, overdone.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
it's a hard line to walk, you know. It's just like, but I think it's just like if you come to it with a place of you know, you know, legitimacy, or you know, just like if you're genuine with your representation of what you're doing, then like
yeah,
I think it comes off the way you want it to. And I feel like that's what's always worked well for us. You know, there's people who didn't really get it and not understand it at first, but eventually they're like, okay, I see what's going on here and I understand now.
Yeah, I remember being in the front row and like you like rolled up with like it was like a full on cape. I was like, man, I was like, this guy looks like he's like ready to. I don't know. It was just very different. Like I mean, like
Yeah.
the whole like 3 days. I just saw people in black t-shirts, and I'm like, where is this? Who is this guy? Uh,
Exactly. That's, I mean, that's it's kind of like, if anything, you left that day with like
a
with like
question, yeah,
intrigue and question, and like you're like, wow, you know what I mean? Like that's the type of stuff that we like enjoyed about music growing up, and we were like, we didn't really see that happening a lot anymore. And that's why we're like, well, this is what we're gonna do, and if we put our full purpose and like actual like heart into it, if you will, like I feel like people will understand it in a sense that like, oh, they're not doing this as a joke. Like we're very genuine with that stuff.
right, right. So I guess let's go into um, maybe like one person in specific throughout your life that has really shaped who you are as a person, like musically. Let's put it this way: one person that you would love to just sit down and have like a guitar lesson with, or like I don't know, like a vocal coach or whatever.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, I would say like just an influence on what I like to do and want to do in music and guitar. It would probably be like Randy Uchida from
Okay.
G.I.S.M and Randy Uchida Group. Like I think what he did in terms of sound, and like I'm really into I'm very anti-intellectualism when it comes to music writing and about
I think we all are.
understanding music. Yeah, like I'm not sitting at home reading theory or anything like that. Like I have had this very throughout my whole life in terms of like creating and writing music. I want to come to it as you know, as clearly as possible without any sort of outside representation or outside, influence in terms of like I think there should be no boundaries in terms of your writing, songs and stuff like that. So I'm not one to, I'm not taking guitar lessons or anything like that. Not to say that I probably shouldn't.
Hey
I don't
man.
think it would hurt, but um I think that those guys, especially Randy Uchida, like I think that he was just such a genuine, creative, and the way he played guitar and then wrote, it's fantastic, and just so out of the ordinary for what was happening in music at that time. And it was a huge influence on us, especially like early on in writing songs for the band. And I would love to, he's passed on, but I would love to, on some astral plane somewhere, sit down and talk to him about music one day.
There you go. It's gonna happen, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a funny topic you bring up. The thought of guitar lessons, like, it's kind of hilarious because thinking back on my past with guitar lessons, I did guitar lessons for like 4 years, 5 years. But it was all like theory and like, the blues and things that I didn't want to play, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and I want to see if you agree with me here. Like, once you develop like an ear, like once your hands connect with each other and you develop that ear, I don't know. Like, I don't really think that you need guitar lessons if you're just writing music, right?
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, it's like almost it becomes almost a crutch sometimes for people where they rely too heavily on theory, or the sort of conformed style of writing music, like A B, like that's not really what we want to do. And I don't think it would really help us as a band, honestly. Like
Yeah.
especially we try to be as different in that sense as we can. We do get a lot of influence. Like I listen to classical and a lot of interesting stuff that you wouldn't probably assume would be an influence for us is some of the stuff that we really draw a lot of inspiration from. um, and I think that that stuff lives outside of, you know, the conformity of, you know, classical song structure and stuff like that. That's doesn't really help me, or it's not really interesting to me to try to learn, you know, that type of stuff. Not to say, you know, it wouldn't hurt to learn, like, you know, some things, you know, but at the end of the day, if you're able to write music and it comes from you and your ability to take what you've heard through life and like a sort of like oral Rolodex that you have in your brain and create music, then, you know, I don't see the reason to have to learn guitar, you know.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I mean, do you think that there's anything hmm besides like having an ear, what do you think is like a good characteristic of a talented guitar player? I mean, I'm trying to think, man. Like, I mean, there's so many guitar players out in the world today, and I think one of the funniest analogies John from Incantation told me is, you know, you could watch all these YouTube videos and be like the best guitar player of all time, but do you just want to be like one of those guys that could play as great as possible, or do you want to like write something that sounds like shit and but like resonates with somebody? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I'm of the latter. I'm like, you know, hey man, that's, you know, like I have friends and I've worked with musicians where like I'll show them stuff I'm working on and they're like, "Hey man, musically that's wrong. Like what you're showing me right now is wrong, but don't stop what you're doing." And you know, cuz it just kind of creates its own unique thing. It's like, you know, I understand if you're like a guitar player and that stuff is awesome,
yeah,
but that's not what we're going for, and that's certainly not like what our goal is. You know, we're going for a specific sound, and like we're pushing it as far as we can, and kind of just, I don't know, just like breaking outside of that box. But no, I wholly agree with you. I know I feel like a lot of like, you know, new guitar players and stuff, they get really wrapped up in trying to be pitch perfect or kind of following, you know, a certain style and stuff like that, and they lose that creativity. And
yeah, yeah.
I think that they should worry about that stuff more, you know, just worry about, you know, what am I doing right now? Is it unique? Is it something that I would like to hear, you know? Because you know, I think people lose the plot, really.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about, well, there was one specific thing that you said uh that rung my ear to talk to you about tone. uh okay, here's the funniest thing that you're going to hear all night. Ready? Have you found your tone yet? Everybody that I've ever talked to said no.
I'm gonna tell you no, man.
Yeah.
I think it's that, like, I think if you were to come to someone and say I have the perfect tone, then you've lost already,
You've
man.
lost your
Like,
fucking mind, right?
yeah, because it's the you're chasing, it's a quest, man, and it never ends. There's days where I'm like, oh man, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard, and then I'll have moments where I'm like, honestly, what the fuck am I doing right now? Like, what
Yeah.
is this? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, and it's a lot of experimentation, and like we're not a gear band, you know what I mean? Like we just mash shit together, and we try to make what our sound is, and it's, you know, it kind of comes with like a lack of understanding almost of
There,
gear
but
that,
that's good. That's good, man. That is
yeah.
perfect for exactly what you're doing. What do
Like
you
most of us didn't even own amps until recently. Like we were just we're
oh boy.
dirtbag band for
What were you
sure.
doing? What were you guys running?
Just borrowing stuff. Well, we used to play. We are big proponents of the PV chorus combos. We just love that big '80s like PV sound, like those old crunchy metal amps. Like that's the shit I love.
Okay.
But you know, we were showing up to bigger shows that we were on, and we would roll up with combos, and like the sound engineers would be laughing at us, and like I'm just like, hey man, it is what it is. But
That's funny,
we
man.
yeah, we recently finally started to actually start to get real gear as a band, and it just goes to show you, like, dude, I don't know, like, I'm not a big proponent of, like, the white stripes or anything like that, but I did read this interview with Jack White once where he talked about just using the shittiest gear on purpose just to, like, make something interesting. And I was like, man, I respect that. Like, that's really cool. Anyone can go out and buy, like, the nicest amp and nicest guitar. It's like, it's not going to make you interesting as a guitar player or as a musician.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually just going to analyze. It's going to make the crowd analyze your guitar picking a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. No one's
uh,
looking at me too close because they see, like, I barely own an amp.
that's funny, man. Um, yeah, that's hilarious. But no, that's a good quote, man. I think uh, I think I've seen like a billion Mesa 4x12s like since I started going to metal shows. Like, I mean, that's like standard. Like that's in the back room of every venue.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so you said that you're into smaller stuff, right? I'm assuming. Uh, I just saw a band the other day, and the bass player had literally, like the standard 4x10. I think it's a 4x10
Hmm.
or 4x12 or something crazy.
Hmm.
Um, they're like literally as tall as you, the bass cab.
Yeah.
Um, but this dude literally had a cab that was about 1 foot tall, and it sounded great.
Yeah,
You know?
man. If you can use it, you can make it work. It's again, it kind of goes back into, like, worrying about gear too much, worrying about perfect theory, perfect songwriting. You know what I mean? It's just like that shit doesn't really make anything interesting at the end of the day, dude. Like, if you can take the shittiest gear and cobble
make
it
it
together
sound
and make it
make it
sound
sound like
cool, like,
something.
yeah, dude, that's that all the bands that we are inspired by and aspire to be like they couldn't afford cool amps or cool guitars or pedals. Like, they just smash shit together and just made their own unique sound with it. And I think
Yeah,
that's a good place to come from.
yeah, and I think some of the most successful musicians that I've talked to, um, literally told me that like some of their most favorite records they've ever heard or listened to on a daily basis, like the budget was nearly nothing. Like the equipment they use on the records that they love, like was worth maybe less than $100,
Yeah, I
which is
mean,
funny.
I'm not surprised. Like, that's the type of shit that inspires us a lot, because again, that's perseverance, man. That's pushing through, like, the what is perceived of what you have and creating something special and unique. So, I mean, like, when we started as a band, none of us really had any gear. We couldn't really afford much. um we just had whatever we had laying around, and just kind of made out of it what we could.
Yeah. Um. So I was looking back on your Metalum website, whatever you know what it is, Encyclopedia Metalum, your page on
Hmm.
Devil Master, and I remember seeing your guitar player. I'm not exactly sure his actual name because it says Darkest Prince on here.
Hmm.
Um, but I remember seeing him play for Coffin Dust.
Oh, that's a
Uh,
huge throwback, man. Yeah, that's great friends of ours.
yeah,
Very, very awesome band from Pennsylvania, for sure.
yeah, holy crap, man! And it was funny because I remember seeing him like all over, man. I think he went to Maryland Death Fest. Then he played in Coffin Dust. I'm like, where? I'm like, this guy is all over the place. And then I saw him uh, with your band. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Uh,
Man, he's just a genuine, like, traveler, pursuer of music. Like, he's been like a hired gun for music for as long as I've known him, and I've known him since he was probably like 13, 14 years old almost at this point. Like, he's just pursuing music, and that's his passion in life. So he goes where the music is, and he'll play in any band. It's pretty awesome, and he's just naturally talented enough to just like do that too.
Yeah. Now, would you say that I realize that this has been your only band, like in your whole life? Is that correct? Well, based off of
Yeah.
that Metalum, right?
Yeah. It is. This has been like the first actual project I've played a little bit growing up. Not very serious in other projects, but this is like my first actual band I've ever had.
Right. Now, so thinking back to when you started Devil Master, right? What was your only sole intention? I'm quite curious. Like, I mean, we were just talking about you playing in a stadium. Think about the day that you decided to like, record your first song. What was your sole intention with the band?
It's kind of funny because I just was having this kind of mental. I was just having this conversation with myself, like internally recently, and I remember,
Hey, I think I
clicking.
lost you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, something. I think you're like over the mic or something.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Look.
There you go.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, when I first started in the band, I mean, I really had no. There was no path. I never saw like. I just like music, man. I never was like a musician, so I never had any intention of doing music as like a career or something like that. I've never been that guy. Um, I just wanted to play music that I liked and wanted to hear. It was mostly, I would say, if we were to boil it down, it's like I want to be in a band that I want to listen to. You know what I mean? I saw
Yeah.
that there was a space for that, and that people were not approaching what we were doing from the perspective that we were taking. And I was like, I want to just do that. You know what I mean? I want to be a band that if I showed up to a show, I'd be like, oh man, this is cool. This is something different. And that's genuinely where I come from. And that's still kind of where I am with it too. I'm like, hey man, if I can show up to a venue and play a show to people who've never heard of us and they walk away with questions like you did, or if they're genuinely interested, or if they kind of pursue music from a different perspective, then I've done a good job.
Yeah. No, I think without a doubt, your band's doing a good job because I mean everything about it. I mean the music is it's catchy. It's something original without a doubt. There's some definitely new flavors within what you're playing, and then like the visual aspect. It is something different. I mean, it, without a doubt, 100%. There's something new going on.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean that's the goal.
Um, all right, so I think let's wrap it up with basically what you got going on in the future, and yeah, anything else you want to share that we have might have missed.
So I mean, currently, we're just wrapping up this year. We got a few shows left for us. We're playing a fest out in LA. We got a show tomorrow in New York. Um, Not much else for the rest of this year. We're really just trying to get back in the studio. Honestly, we want to start working on some new material, and it's kind of funny, like the time the timeline and then span of music nowadays is very fast. And um, I mean, we had all the intention in the world of getting a lot more out, but with a lot of the setbacks that happened with the pandemic and stuff, we sort of lost a lot of our kind of speed, if you will. Like, so we're gonna get back in the studio soon and start working on some new stuff, and hopefully we want to make it out to Europe next year because we still haven't been out there as a band. It's but yeah, I mean, I just want to play more shows and meet cool people. That's kind of what we're that's kind of what we're pursuing next year.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, that's crazy, man. Dude, like Europe, that's crazy. I mean, just
Never
just for
something I thought I would be doing.
yeah. Well, I was just about to say that, man. I mean, I think this conversation's coming to a head in the fact that like when you started this band, I mean, you didn't really have any intentions of doing any of it. I mean, but like the stadium and now you're going to Europe, like that's fucking sick. And I think that you should keep on doing what you're doing because obviously you're doing something right, you know.
I hope so.
But yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and this has been a super fun time. Thanks for bearing with my my flu.